Welcome to the Chicago Bears Podcast, a presentation of ESPN Chicago, Chicago's home for sports. Here's your host, Pat, the Designer.
Kyler Gordon has really settled in here in year two. He looked pretty good second half of year one. Looked like he finally started to settle in. Ended up with the 3 interceptions last season. I felt like he felt a little bit more comfortable, but now even being able to just focus on the position. What are you seeing from Kyler Gordon? What are the coaches seeing from Kyler Gordon that is standing out in his second year in this OTAs?
I think the biggest thing for Kyler is the ability to focus really in on one thing. And that's not to say he's never going to play outside corner again, but even he admitted yesterday that, he kind of misses doing that, but it's better for him to just have like the nickel corner spot to focus on. And how often teams, especially the Bears, are in they're in sub packages, they are going to use him. They use him as a starter. Most teams, I hate when people are like, oh, the fifth corner, like whatever, or like the fifth DB. No, the nickel is a starting position. When you're playing in the slot like that, you are a starter. And so for him to focus on that position and not have to like take this plethora of information in the way that he did as a rookie, where it's like, okay, I'm starting on the outside. Like, go look at his PFF stats. I have them at the snap counts right here. Like, starting like week one, he was in the slot like 46 snaps. He was up in the box 7 snaps. He played outside corner 13 snaps. Like, he's all over the place. And I just think that that's a lot of information, because the slot is like one of the hardest positions to play in any given defense. Like, you're a traffic cop weaving in and out of traffic yourself. And so you don't have the boundary to work with. You don't have, some of the things that make playing outside corner, matching up against number one. You're like, there's just a lot that goes into it. So I think for Kyler Gordon, and what we've heard from Alan Williams, he was talking about his RPM. So rotation, I believe that's rotations per minute. Like, it's when I think of RPMs, I think of the car, the little circle in your car, and you like rev the engine and it goes into the red. He said that he's not in the red as much this year. And I guess that's a term that they use in the building. So it's not just always just using this car analogy to like explain where Kyler Gordon is, because Kyler's like, oh yeah, like my RPMs, I want to conserve my energy, so I'm not going 100 miles an hour all the time, because eventually, like, you just can't sustain that pace. And I think it's working smarter, not harder, for Kyler Gordon, when his workload hasn't necessarily been truncated, but it's been more streamlined, where, hey, we want you to be the best. They drafted him to be a nickel. I mean, he grabbed hold of that job pretty early on in his rookie season. And he went through the roller coaster of having to play multiple positions in a defense and finally settling in last year. And the consistency element's what you want to see more of from him, and getting there in year two. A lot of players make that jump year 1 to year 2. That's got to be the main focus for him, where you can have a series of good plays, but if there's a bad play, if there's, if you miss your key on something, if you don't read something correctly, don't let that set you back for the next 10 plays. And I think that comes with everybody. I mean, he was their highest draft pick last year, so there's definitely a little bit more of a spotlight on him for that, but he's a very critical piece to this defense. And to be able to utilize the things that he did wrong last year and things that he did right, and use that database, so to speak, to build on, hey, I know how to play this position and I can do it really successfully. That's where that's really where like it starts for him in the offseason program.
This is another reason what gets me excited about this team, right? I told McKee yesterday, I said, I hate this, but as the season's getting closer, I swear I'm drinking a Bears Kool-Aid. Like, it's not like the, like it's not red. It's not 13 win Kool-Aid out here. It's not the brown, it's a mixture, 9 wins, but I think that the reason that I'm getting excited about this season is I'm not hearing, we've got this guy here, but we're trying him there. We've got this guy here, but we're trying them there. We've got, like, these guys are getting an opportunity to learn the position that they were brought here to play. And my God, that was my pet peeve with the Matt Nagy era. Why in God's good green earth would we draft a right tackle and say, yeah, let's try him at center? Mm-hmm. Draft the left tackle and say, yeah, let's try him at guard. Like that, I feel like with everybody, if I can focus on this thing and become really, really good at this, I can dominate you at this. I can still be good at that. I think that, and I think, right, was it Alan Williams, I think, was talking yesterday, and he said he's gonna probably have to play some outside listeners football. People get hurt.
That's why they cross train. Like, I mean, the offensive line does it where you're gonna see, like, you know, the combination is pretty much set as of right now, but you're still going to see guys with different units, whether it's first team, second team, third team, moving in and out, trying different positions, because chances are it's a violent sport. People are going to get hurt. So you need to have a backup option and not, I think for what Alan Williams said was that he doesn't want Kyler Gordon to ever be in a position like, man, I haven't played any outside corner in a while. Like, what's my leverage on this? What do I have to do on this certain play? Like, you have to keep guys fresh and keep, really keep guys up to task on that stuff. And so it's always going to happen, but predominantly his role is going to be playing in the slot where he excelled at Washington. And that's what the Bears envisioned for him from the day they drafted him.
Yeah. It's just good to see that guys are getting the opportunity to do what they do best. Because I feel like, right, again, when contract times come up, we sit there and we look at the player and we say, okay, but you weren't good at this. Yeah, well, I wasn't supposed to be doing that. I look at it like, right, how the Bulls were this season. Everybody, right, like, listen, the Bulls weren't a great team at all. But what I said all season was, well, yeah, Zach LaVine's playing point guard. You didn't pay Zach LaVine $215 million to be a point guard. That's a problem. All of a sudden he gets to play shooting guard, and he's one of the best shooting guards in the NBA again. So I think that, right, we overlook that sometimes, and these are the things that GMs and different people will look at and say, well, yeah, well, you weren't doing this, you weren't making these plays. It's like, yeah, well, it's because of this reason. You didn't bring me here to do this. The fact that we're putting guys in position where they're actually going to be able to go out there and do what they do best, that does get me excited for this season. I think it gives the Bears a little bit of a step ahead of a lot of teams who were where we were last season that are in flux and trying to figure out where they are taking this next step.
Yeah, there's definitely a difference between this guy projects better playing this position in the NFL, like, in terms of like the measurables of a player. We heard it a lot with the offensive line and, going to Peter Skoronski, oh, he's probably a guard in the NFL. You hear that a lot, like, especially in the offensive line. It's one thing if guys are told they're going to transition into a different spot because it's a better fit. It's a different thing. Like, I'm playing out of position because there's mitigating circumstances that are beyond a player's control that put them in a spot where they have to play something that they're not necessarily comfortable with. And that's not just the cornerback room. That has been a lot of different places. I mean, look at Eddie Jackson. Like, sometimes when you bring somebody else in and it gives you the opportunity to play a position or go back to playing a position, like for him playing free safety, that's you see players really thrive in that because I know we go through, they get paid a lot of money, they should be able to adjust and adapt. It gets really freaking hard. These are like the 1%ers of all athletic people, period. And to ask players, especially like a young rookie, like when Kyler Gordon got in here and having to play arguably the most difficult position in the secondary, and then also having to take in all this information and everything else, and knowing that the secondary was going to be was one of the worst in 2021, and they did make improvements last year in terms of the personnel, but that it was going to be a long work in progress. You can't really fault him for how up and down his rookie season was, and I just felt like with the mindset he expressed yesterday, like the confidence and overall demeanor that it's going to be okay. I've gotten the hardest part. I mean, there will definitely be hard parts again, but he's got the hardest part out of the way. So giving himself some grace, which I think everybody can, afford to express towards players who go through those transitional periods. That's all he's got to do, at least at this part of OTAs. And then going into training camp, it's going to be a different element of okay, what does he need to do now? And then what's the next thing? So I think he's honestly right on track of where he needs to be.
Yeah, no, it gets me excited to see, these guys, how they're talking early on, how comfortable they feel, and even how the coaches are talking. The one thing that stood out to me yesterday with the coaching staff as well, Tyrique Stevenson made a good play on Justin Stevenson. Justin Fields ends up getting the pick, jumped the route, beautiful play, going the other way. Defense is hype. when we heard from DB's coach, John Hoke, afterwards, he was like, yeah, I love it. It's a good play. But also, he's got to catch the ball the right way. He had that same play last week and he dropped it because he wasn't catching the ball the right way. Like these guys, there's a standard that we're seeing this coaching staff hold these players to, even in their successes, and they're not wavering off of that. I love to see that. And I think that that's going to be helpful for this room in the long run, especially a young guy like Tyrique Stevenson, who I think the Bears have really high hopes on.
Yeah, and him being here is overall going to help Kyler Gordon and, help the rest of the secondary. It's twofold because you get somebody in who's a third-round pick. He's projected to start outside. They're not going to be working him into the slot because that's Kyler Gordon's role. Now, does he have slot flexibility? Yeah, he played it at Georgia. It was half the reason that he left to go to Miami because he wasn't happy with that position. But in a pinch, if you need him, he can play it. Like that's right. They've got clear defined priorities for these guys, from the wide receiver room down to the cornerbacks and everybody else in the secondary. And so I look at that and I think that the developments you're seeing at a very early stage of OTAs, but he was playing with the twos last week, Tyrique Stevenson, and Alan Williams, like we asked him, like, what does he need to do to maybe get some reps with the ones? His idea was, make plays. It's pretty, bare bones, obvious, but like do things consistently. I mean, they throw a lot at these guys. And so for him to then go out and make a play, like that's showing you that the coaching, the ability to like grasp concepts and understand football, they've really praised his football IQ a lot, which typically for a rookie, it's so overwhelming because it's just so different than what you did in college. The rules for cornerbacks are different. You can't get away with grabbing as much as you did in college. So
at all.
That learning curve is going to be steep, and that's fine. That's what you expect. But it really sounds like not just the on the field stuff, but he's really impressed them in the meeting room with his ability to read and understand concepts that probably are pretty advanced for someone who has not played in the NFL yet. And you're learning all of the different fits in this defense and all the things he's going to be responsible for. And he's going to it's a position of need because, of course, you think Jalen Johnson on the other side and then Tyrique Stevenson, more than likely, at the other outside corner spot. The communication back there. It's one thing Kyler Gordon talked about when he went back and watched the film of his 2022 season. Miscommunication. I mean, God, how many times have we heard that last year? And so much of that is, what position do I need to be in? Where do you need to be? And I need to know where you need to be. So like that's how I look at it, that it's a lot of moving parts. And for a young cornerback to at least show the signs that he's getting it this early on, the coaching staff can't be anything but pleased about that.
Is Tyrique Stevenson the guy who kind of ends up being Jaquan Brisker for Eddie Jackson, right? Like, is Tyrique Stevenson that for Jalen Johnson and Kyler Gordon?
I mean, he's going to man an outside spot, so I just think that frees up. I understand the analogy, and I think that for Eddie last year, not having to play up in the box and not having to, make those
all of a sudden he was
physical plays. Yeah, like he wants to be roaming in the back end of the defense, where Jaquan Brisker will, sacrifice his body, do whatever he needs to do to make a play. He likes playing up near line of scrimmage. He likes sacking the quarterback, as evidenced by like leading the team in sacks last year. But it's a situation that I think has parallels to that. And I say that because like Eddie had, like, I know that people criticize him for like, oh, you didn't have 2 interceptions. You didn't have an interception for 2 years after signing a contract. Of course, there were plenty of plays that got called back, all sorts of things like that. For Kyler Gordon, we don't know. It's not that like, oh, he has to get back to this version of himself and Tyrique Stevenson coming in here is going to help him do that. We don't know what the version looks like because he went through a very steep learning curve as a rookie. So in theory, that makes sense that he should be able to, like Tyrique Stevenson coming in should be able to elevate everybody at the cornerback spot and everybody in the secondary. But I think it really boils down to Kyler Gordon can then play one spot and play it really, really well and focus in on what he needs to do, because he's going to be dictating a lot of what the outside corner's responsibilities are, because as a nickel, like you're responsible for so much more than than what those guys are, because you're playing at different levels of the defense. So it's important.
I feel like that he could be that piece that just allows them to play more free, right? Like that's what I saw from Eddie Jackson last year. It just looked like he was playing free again. All right, the 2 interceptions or the 2 years with no interceptions. I do agree with you on the part where like there's some that were called back. I remember just looking and being like, "There's no way you're calling that a block in the back," or "There's no way that you're like." He had the worst luck fall for him for 2 years straight. But I also think that, right, like Eddie Jackson to me is a guy that wants to drop the shoulder and lay the boom on people, not so much do the wrap up tackle. I think that Jaquan Brisker allows him to be more free with that, because I know somebody's going to protect me on the backside a little bit more. I think that that's kind of what, Kyler Gordon can do, Jalen Johnson can do with Tyrique Stevenson now on the other side. I think it just allows everybody to kind of relax and play a little bit more free and just go out there and play ball, play the game that they love. So